This is things you might have heard, and I am Jay Cleveland Payne, and today for you, I have 8 things in this queue, 8 stories queued up for you, including the SpaceX failure success that happened. Now, the sad thing is, 2 stories we're not talking about is the ex-flight attendant who got caught with 101 pounds of cocaine in her checked-in baggage, and the pardon that's been given to the Grizzlies by Donald Trump. And I really can't explain why that's not happening because they were there. Well, I can explain it because it didn't quite get the engagement the other stories did. That's just how things work around here. So we are talking about 8 stories with the higher engagement that seem like the better narratives. We will get to the Grizzlies later. Unfortunately, we probably won't get to that cocaine story, although it is interesting. We do have a Florida man story that I just could not pass up, which is essentially why those 2 stories aren't there. But 8 news stories otherwise that you deemed as conversational, including Florida Man, that cover information, politics, current events, and pop culture news. We will talk about the Harvard contracts and how they're going away and how much money they actually deal with. Of course, the SpaceX Starship that was successful to a point. And yeah, that Florida Man story coming up. We'll explain the vetting process, how the stories we actually picked became the stories you actually picked. And of course, we will give you some more fun stuff along the way. 3 things off the bat. Number one, things you might not have heard is presented by the Conversation Project. And you can find more about us, it, and all the things at thisistheconversationproject.com. Now, you can also email me with conversational things to talk about for conversational things at our email address for the show, the conversation inbox, gmail.com. Email me directly at jclevelandpayne@gmail.com if you want to, but show stuff, keep it here, right there. We also are using Ground News. We're going to stick with it all week long, I'm pretty sure, for our sponsors for Spotlights, because it's been a crazy year so far. And the news that's being put out there has been extremely crazy, as one Trump may say to a Putin. So we're going to talk about how you can get better news or different news for your news engagement with Ground News. Use our affiliate link. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news and get yourself a deal on the Advantage plan. Also, get us a little bit of cheddar back to it. We get a small commission for your buy. Today, if I hadn't said so yet, definitely is Wednesday, May the 28th, 2025. And on this short work week where the days just don't seem to fit anymore, we are definitely on the hump day of the day. So we'll get through some news stories, 8 stories as promised. These 8 stories are presented in the best way of narratives speak, and the kicker must be Florida Man. Story number 1. We kick things off with the Trump administration as they are moving to cancel about $100 million in federal contracts with Harvard. This is the battle between Donald Trump and Harvard. And while many people are sort of whispering in the fact that maybe there's a bit more to this other than the anti-Semitism that isn't there, or just them being defiant because they're not there, or yeah, they have a $38 million endowment, so why do they need $3 billion from the government? So there are those questions, but people are starting to think in the underlying, there's a little something extra Trump has against Harvard, because they're fighting back maybe. But directly for this one, as Trump is using Harvard as its punching bag and its example for the world to see, the Trump administration is directing federal agencies to terminate all remaining contracts with the university, which is only about $100 million in the grand theme of things, but they go to some important things. Now, they're also freezing at $2.2 billion in grants contracts right now, so that's already there. But anything left should be cut by the end of the month, or in the next month, should say. The administration has cited concerns over Harvard's policies with diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, and the campus's handling of activism and alleged anti-Semitism. Harvard has challenged the administration's actions continually, asserting that the federal government demands infringes on the academic freedom and institutional autonomy of the institution. It's not a state school. It's not a federally funded school. It's a private school. And so they can do what they want to, but the things they do with the money, the things they do with those contracts are things that, because they're really good at stuff, they do it well. The president of the university, Alan Garber, emphasized Harvard's commitment to principles and legal rights, stating that the institution would not comply with mandates that deem unconstitutional. Harvard instigating legal proceedings to contest the funding cuts and policy directives. With this termination of federal contracts and funding posing significant challenges for Harvard's research initiatives and student programs, Harvard is doing what it can to stick to its guns. Projects reliant on federal support, particularly things in science and medicine, are uncertain. Now, as we said, there is a $38 million endowment that Harvard has. They have $38 million in the bank, but as with most endowments, when people write you a check, they go to what they ask for. A rich person writes you a check for $1 million and says, put my name on this building. You put your name on that building that they're building for that one. That $1 million goes to that building and that name there. They say, put this funds into this program. It goes in that program. Doesn't get spent immediately, but just it siphons off from time to time. The reason why it's such a big endowment is because they don't spend it all at once on big block things. They don't spend it on the general fund of everything. They go to specific projects. With Trump and the administration pulling funds for the grants, which are one thing, and for these contracts, another thing, is going to affect students at Harvard and programs that aren't necessarily put in endowments, things like science and things like art and things like knowledge, which Harvard is trying to stand up to. The administration is sparking protests. Their move is sparking protests among students and faculty who are, of course, viewing this as a tax on academic independence. We shall see how this goes on. The real sort of oddity about this story is the president right now is a new president to Harvard. That is Alan Garber. When he came with a thought process of changing things up, make things a bit more non-academic, if you will, get some of that stink of the past that they had to deal with before and make things a little different, change things up. And in the process has begun to do these things, but also now has to deal with having to fight the administration who's claiming things that may or may not be so true, but also claiming these things in the name of taking back money that Harvard needs to support itself and survive, even with the endowment, as endowments, as I said earlier, are a bit complicated. The U.S. is also pausing student visas, or at least the interviews with them, everywhere, and expanding social media vetting of all people, all students coming into this United States. Happening yesterday, pausing on all student visa interviews globally. Everybody, not just to Harvard, everybody. This decision to pause all student visa interviews was signed in a cable by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He's going to prepare for an expanded social media screening of all applicants going forward. Pause affects F, M, and J visa categories with existing appointments proceeding as scheduled. So if you're basically a student or one of those categories there, looking for a place to go to school, a place to have someone house your visa, to sponsor your visa, those ones are on pause. Other visas are still in play. In general, students in particular. Enhanced screening will involve thorough review of applicants' social media activity, where officers are instructed to access posts, shares, and comments from platforms like Instagram, X, and TikTok for content deemed threatening to national security. The policy shift is part of the administration's efforts to combat anti-Semitism and address concerns about foreign influence on U.S. campuses. Anti-Semitism is a theme in these things, but it's also, let's just say, an excuse in these things. This pause comes during a critical period for international students planning to begin studies in the fall here in the United States. Delaying in the visa process could lead to decreased enrollment in international students and contribute significantly to U.S. higher education institutions, academically and financially. One, less students to be in the body. Two, foreign students pay the full ride. They get no incentives, no grants, no loans. They have someone has to actually write them a check to show up. Plus, they have to live with the bounds of the visa there. So that's straight up cash that is being lost by these higher institutions. Experts are warning that the prolonged disruptions may have long-term effects on university budgets and a diversity of campus communities, which may also be sort of the point. Critics of the policy express concerns about potential infringements on free speech, the risk of discrimination based on political views, whether they come from another country or not. You still can hold your political views. They just don't want you, well, the administration doesn't want you protesting all, but they don't want you causing harm and basically trying to be some sort of a wing of some sort of terrorist group in the States on a visa here. That makes sense. But having views against something that may or may not be popular here is where the question lies. The legal challenges have arisen, lots of people involving revocation of visas for apparently no reason, or the reason being pro-Palestinian activism in particular going forward. The administration maintains that the measures are necessary to keep up national security and basically fight anti-Semitism actions. That's what they're saying. The State Department has not specified whether new visa interviews will resume, when, where, how, with the guidance being Hispanic vetting procedures to be issued in coming days. So this charge to go look in social media, it's just sort of said there. There's no actual plan in place, no actual rule book to do that yet. We shall see how this one plays out and if there will be legal challenges to this one in the near future. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now claims that COVID vaccines are no longer recommended for the children, the bulk of the children, and for pregnant women. These are healthy children and pregnant women. This happened yesterday as well, as Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. announced the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is no longer recommending COVID-19 vaccines going forward for healthy children and pregnant women. This marks a pretty much big departure from the previous guidance, as you would guess from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being a definitely different cat from the guys in past that ran the show. Advocating for vaccinations to these groups prevents severe illnesses and transmissions of the virus. Overall, Kennedy cited a lack of sufficient clinical data supporting the need for repeat boosters in these populations, particularly. The rationale for the change. Announcement was made in a video posted to social media featuring Kennedy alongside FDA Commissioner Marty McKay and NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya. There were no other members no people in for this for CDC or HHS in this video, and no other guidance going forward. Criticism from public health experts and medical organizations with the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and American Academy of Pediatrics emphasizing that the COVID-19 poses a significant risk during pregnancy and early childhood. And even though a child is healthy and a woman seems to be going through a failed pregnancy, vaccination is a crucial tool to mitigating these risks anyway. Critics also argue that the decision bypasses established advisory processes and could undermine public health and vaccines, and trust in vaccines, should say, which seems to be already in the works, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has had a history of undermining the health and trust in vaccines. Also been raised about potential impact on insurance coverage and access to vaccinations as well, as CDC recommendations often influence such policies. If your policy does not cover vaccinations, it could be because the CDC says, don't worry about it. So if you want it, it may cost you extra just because you want it, not because it's a necessity per the CDC. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices was reportedly not consulted prior to this announcement. So the CDC has not updated its actual official immunization schedule yet to reflect this change. The unilateral decision by Health Secretary has led to confusion among healthcare providers and the general public as well, with experts warning that the removal of these recommendations leading to decreased vaccination rates and maybe more vulnerability to COVID-19 in the future with women and children, pregnant women specifically, as they're told not to get the vaccine. It's an evolving situation. Vaccines are a complicated situation. They always are. But we'll see how this thing actually plays out in the future, because it's going to play out in the future. It's going to happen. It's going to be a thing. It's what it is. And we will see in the near or far future how it'll be played out by the administration and by the Health and Human Services Director himself, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So I walked away from this thinking all was okay, but apparently all was not all okay, as the SpaceX Starship launches its 9th test flight after previous explosions. Blast 2, 7, and 8 blew up. This one, not quite blowing up. It did go to some milestones and get some things done, but it concluded its flight test, watching it live, being covered on TV last night from Starbase, Texas. Not quite a town yet, but we'll be there. The mission featured the first reuse of a super heavy booster, marking the significant milestone in the company's efforts to develop a fully reusable spacecraft. The launch stage and separation proceeded as planned. The upper stage reached space, surpassing the performance of previous flights, not blowing up. Critical issues in the mission, however. The super heavy booster, intended to splash down in the Gulf of Mexico, exploded during its descent. Blew up before it can hit the ground. No one hurt, but that was not reused because it's supposed to be reusable. It's supposed to come back into the water and be picked up. The Starship upper stage experienced a failure in its payload door mechanism, preventing the deployment of a Starlink satellite simulators, so it didn't actually get the mission done. And sequentially, the spacecraft lost altitude control during reentry and disintegrated over the Indian Ocean. It blew up as well, but not as early as past attempts. Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, acknowledged the setbacks, but emphasized the progress that was made. It was progress. Things actually happened that were moving forward, but the full mission was not actually successful. He noted that the mission achieved successful ascent, no significant heat shield loss, identified a main tank pressure loss during the coast And re-entry phrases for contributing factor to failure. Must emphasize optimism about the data collected and announce plans to increase the frequency of test flights to every 3 or 4 weeks. More rockets, more problems, maybe. Now, if you watched it on live on TV, you would notice many times you would look up and the countdown will be under 30 seconds, and then you look up and be at 40 seconds again, and just with a pause button just sitting there on the television. As conditions were basically being checked, various things were found to be wrong or just say not right. So they could pause the launch as long as it was under 10 seconds. At 10 seconds, when the rockets really fire off, you can't do anything about that. So as long as it was 20 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, they could pause it, back it up 40 seconds, wait till it's ready to go, and go back into the session. So that's why I was watching it. I was watching News Nation. They had some rocket scientists on with the host there at the time, that being Elizabeth Vargas. And I was watching, they're talking, and looked up, looked down, and looked up, and it was like at 35 seconds, then looked up again, and it was sitting at 40. And they were still talking. And then, it started counting again, looked down again, it was back at 40. And they explained that what was going on in that case. So if you're watching it live and not understanding why it launched about 5 minutes later than it was supposed to on time, it was because as it got under 40 seconds, they had some last minute things that they figured out of before they could launch it. And then they launched it. Then those issues happened. Did not achieve all of its objectives, but it proved to be valuable in the insights that it actually performed. The Starship system has something that is viable. Now, the planned trip to Mars, which is eventually on the books for maybe next year, maybe not, maybe next year. And we're not sending people anywhere anytime soon, anytime anyway. But the planned trip to send something to Mars to basically see if it can make it out there, probably not going to happen as quickly as Musk would like it to happen. We shall see on these things going forward. We're a little long on that SpaceX stuff, which is part of the reason why we're not talking about other stories, which really caught my interest. But we have to stay to some semblance of the rules. 8 stories. You can't go too long, because we'll go too long all the time. We'll just turn into a just chaos. But we also have to stick by a rule by pausing in between to give you a chance to catch your breath for the stories you presented. 4 stories down, 4 more to go for this Wednesday. And right now, we also have to stick to script and ask for your help. Like, share, and subscribe to the work we do here at the Conversation Project. Like, share, and subscribe to this video here. I guess you'll subscribe to the video, subscribe to the channel, and you can help us grow our News Nerd Nation. Part of the magic that is the Conversation Project is the fact that it's a dialogue between all of us. Me putting out there for things for you to engage in, you engaging in them, me turning them into video clips, and then you commenting on them further. In order to have more people to engage, we need more people in the feeds doing things. So we'll talk about the feeds a bit later. That's Facebook and X. But we need you for these videos to make sure more people are viewing them, watching them, getting more engagement, is to like it. If you like the news articles I'm covering, what you hear, if you like the commentary that I'm providing along with it, or if you watch it, you actually hate the news and commentary I'm giving to you, and you're watching for that one, we need you to like it. I know it sounds weird to say like it if you hate it, but that's just the world we live in these days. If you know like-minded people who would like it or hate it, share it directly with them as well. Now, what we're trying to get more people in the like category, because we want the algorithm to show it to more people. It needs to see this as something that is hitting well for other viewers to watch. And if you like it, whether it's for love or hate, I know I'm hitting the right mix in stories and commentary, so I'll do more of those and less of the ones that don't seem to get the engagement that we're looking for together. Now, subscribing means you get it directly in your feed. You don't have to go looking for it. You don't have to wait for the algorithms to send it to you. You don't have to say, hey, that guy who with the who's really poor about getting haircuts and that rambles and sometimes he burps on YouTube. I wonder what he's up to now, and go searching for me. I'll be in your feeds automatically on X, on Facebook, on YouTube, and you can either watch me as I go live with notifications or watch when you get a chance to, whenever the movement fits you. We're not asking you to watch everything. We're not asking you to hit notifications. We're just asking you to subscribe. So we're in your feed. So when the moment hits you that you should check on us, you can check on us. Plus, if you subscribe to the feeds in X and in Facebook, you're already in the feeds that are helping you pick the stories all day long. There's the same feeds going there. YouTube doesn't allow us postings that much, so it doesn't do that. But like, share, and subscribe so we get more of y'all's watching us and more of y'all's in the family. The thought of the U.S. coming back to the Commonwealth may not be such a grand idea, as King Charles gave a speech before the Parliament of Canada, opening a Parliament session, that declared a strong and free Canada and a global force for good in his speech from the throne. Charles III delivered his historic speech from the throne in Canada's Parliament, marking the first such address of a monarch and the first by a reigning sovereign since Queen Elizabeth, his mother, Elizabeth II, if you will, in 77. The speech, crafted by Prime Minister Mark Carney's government, emphasized Canada's sovereignty and resilience and its escalating tensions with their neighbor to the south, us, U.S. Swiftly after, President Donald Trump keeps suggesting that they're annexing Canada as a 51st state, a really big state, but the annex as well. King Charles' declarations that, quote, the true North is indeed strong and free, unquote, resonated as both a nod to Canada's national anthem and a reaffirmation of its own independence. Throne speech outlined that Carney's administration's and agenda, which is focused on economic transformation, housing affordability, and internal trade reforms, is solid. It highlights the plans to eliminate federal internal trade barriers by Canada Day and position Canada as a leader in both clean and conventional energy sectors. The government also announced intentions to strengthen military capabilities and pursue arms procurement through the European Union's ReArm initiative, notably excluding U.S. suppliers. That means buying more stuff from Europe than from its neighbor to the south, us, the U.S. King Charles's visit, although brief, was rich in symbolism. He was accompanied by Queen Camilla, who participated in the ceremonial events, and including a wreath laying at the National War Memorial and meeting with indigenous leaders of the nation. The king's presence and his remarks were seen as a unifying gesture, reinforcing Canada's distinct identity and its commitment to democratic values and international cooperation. Charles is the king of Canada. Canada may be ruled more or less by the actual governing body, but just like over in the UK, the monarch is a figurehead, but a very important figurehead for the people of Canada and other places as well. The speech received widespread support, some criticism by some places because some of the people who are more, let's say, French, calling King Charles a foreign monarch, announcing plans to introduce legislation to end the requirement for members of parliament to pledge loyalty to the crown. Mostly because they're more French than English, so that's how that works out. But there are actual legitimate things in the decision going there. We'll see if that will pass going forward and they'll change their ways or not. The throne speech served as a reaffirmation of Canada's sovereignty and a call of unity and resilience, underscoring the nation's readiness to navigate global challenges independently while maintaining strong international partnerships rooted in mutual respect and shared values with all, including its neighbor to the south, U.S. Its neighbor to the south, U.S., is having issues with its broadcasting stations, as NPR and public stations are suing the Trump administration over the move to end its federal funding there. We talked about earlier Harvard losing federal funding and a lot of fast factors. NPR launched a lawsuit yesterday. Both National Public Radio and 3 Colorado-based public radio stations themselves filed a federal lawsuit against the Trump and the administration. The suit challenges Executive Order 14290, signed on May the 1st, directing Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB, and all federal agencies to cease funding to NPR and Public Broadcasting Service, or PBS. The plaintiffs argue that it violates the First Amendment by retaliating against public broadcasters for content the administration deems unfavorable and infringes upon Congress's exclusivity to allocate its federal funds. That big jumble mess means that Congress has the right to pull money, not the president. And they're just doing it because the president is mad because they say things he doesn't like. The executive order was titled Ending Taxpayer Subsidization of Biased Media. It alleged that public funding for news programming is outdated and undermines journalistic independence. Basically, if the state, being the actual people and taxpayers, pay for some sort of news coverage, and that news coverage is biased, it is a bad thing. It should be independent of any funding or any laws, anything that should be posed by the governments. So it should be independent, period, and should figure out a way to pay for itself. It targets NPR and PBS specifically because it accuses them of bias and reporting directly. In their response, these Colorado stations and NPR are contending that the order is a direct attack on press freedom and overreach of executive power. They should, in fact, in administration, fund some sort of broadcasting unit and some sort of news division to do some news, to report things as they are, even if those reports don't quite make the people paying the bill happy, which is sort of the point. They emphasize that CPB operates as a private nonprofit corporation, actually independent of federal government, and the funding decisions are insulated from political influence. The NPR president and CEO, Catherine Maher, described the executive order as a, quote, politically motivated act of retaliation, in the quote, and that it threatens the editorial independence of public media. Lawsuit underscores the concerns that the order could disrupt essential services provided by public broadcasters, which includes emergency alert services and educational programming. And in some places, it's the only sort of broadcasting you can get. Emergency programming is an important thing. NPR receives about 1% of its funding from CPB, so it shouldn't seem like much. But many local stations, particularly rural ones, rely heavily on that 1% when they don't have large donors to give to the action. This legal action in particular is part of the broader pattern of tension between Trump and the media itself, all organizations. As basically the administration from previous and current have accused the media of being biased and having patterns of just not liking what the government's doing. They attack back, and Trump attacks fairly hard. In this case, this administration, he's attacking hard on the wallet side, on the budgets that may actually do something to maintain his control of the state media and how it's being said in the processes. There'll still be independent medias. This is a world, this is a time where so many people are on YouTube just saying things that are going against the narrative put out by Catherine Levitt. But we'll see if they can support themselves going forward, if they actually can keep things going up as private enterprises, because unless somebody's paying them to get their bills paid, they have to get their bills paid. I said earlier that we're not doing the story on the Grizzlies getting their pardons from Donald Trump. We'll do that in a hot take separately. I'll record that separate because I want to get into that one. They are a obsession of mine going forward. We're not doing the story about the flight attendant who got caught with hundreds of pounds of cocaine in her bags. That one we probably won't get to, but that was one that was like kind of like that one didn't get the response I thought it was. The Grizzly story came in kind of late and didn't really didn't desire the push anything out the one. We have to do Florida Man. We must do Florida Man. He's next. In this one, though, we go to America's sweetheart and Olympic gold medalist Mary Lou Retton, who was arrested recently for a DUI on May 17th, to be exact. The gold medalist was arrested in Fairmont, West Virginia, on a misdemeanor charge of driving while under the influence. Police responded to reports of a Porsche driving erratically and found Retton in a nearby AutoZone parking lot. Officers observed a screw-top bottle of wine in the passenger seat, noted that Retton smelled of alcohol and was slurring her words, and reported that she failed 3 sobriety field tests. She declined both roadside breath tests and chemical blood tests. Retton was released on the same day, posting about $1,500 bond to go back home. The 57-year-old gained national acclaim at the 1984 Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles, becoming the first American woman to win an individual all-around gold medal in gymnastics. She also earned 2 silver and 2 bronze medals at those games, simply boosting the sport's popularity in the United States. She was America's sweetheart for quite some time. Following her athletic career, she remained in the public eye through media appearances and motivational speaking engagements. But in 2023, she faced a serious health challenge where she was hospitalized for a rare form of pneumonia. Lacking medical insurance, her family initiated a crowdfunding campaign to cover the nearly $500,000 in her medical expenses. She described the experience as life-altering, noting that she continues to deal with the lingering respiratory issues these days. Right now, she's not publicly commented on the charge, and her attorney has declined to make any statement as well. Case is pending under Marion County Magistrate Court. No trial date set announced, but this is something that people are looking for. It's dirt. It's tea. It's things people want to see, and that's one reason why we're talking about this one. This was a story you guys definitely engaged in as people of a certain age, Gen Xers essentially, and some younger boomers. Remembering Mary Lou Retton from those days is a thing that brings back the memories of the 80s and sort of the thought process of the nostalgia and the people, who were they now type stories for this one. As I said, many stories were bumped that probably were even more important to the actual zeitgeist of knowledge than this one. But you can't get past a good Florida man, especially when this Florida man survived an alligator attack, but was fatally shot by sheriff's deputies afterwards. This is one that is an interesting case to go into. Florida man stories always are. But in this case, we have a Florida man. Bear with me. I have to raise the thing because I did not copy the right thing. Was bitten by alligator and then subsequently shot and killed by deputies after he attacked them and attempted to access their weapons. The authorities actually believe that the man was under the influence of drugs during the incident. Fairly simple, fairly sweet, fairly quick. Florida man. Hopefully it was worth it for you. I'll probably redo that one in long form. I recopied the wrong copy, so what I had was a retake of George Santos, which is also just as crazy as a story. But yeah, Florida man got bit by alligator, and as he was being attended to by sheriff's deputies while on drugs, went for their weapons because he was, on drugs, shot dead. Check out the link in the details for more details on that one. Plus, I'll probably hot take that one as well. Sorry, folks. Missed that one by a mile. But let's get it back into the swing of the actual things, the stuff we're actually covering with the teaser stories for the day. Now, how we get these stories inside of this thing here, things you might have heard, is by posting them all day long, all night long, every 50 minutes or so to the feeds on Facebook and X. So if you're following us there and you like the video there, you'll see these things when you check your X feeds and your Facebook feeds. 3 stories that are queued up, ready to go right now. So if it's 6:07 Central Time, like I'm speaking right now, if you're live looking right now, you can see at least 2 of these stories. One more story should be coming up in the next hour or so. Kevin Spacey directed a supernatural action thriller in which he stars along with Dolph Lundgren, Tyrese Gibson, and Eric Roberts. You may care. You may not care. It's up to you to engage in that story. Let me know. Also, a story coming out there with a new study that young men are binge drinking less than young women for the first time ever. And there's some details on how this is a thing. And Hugh Jackman and Deborah Lee Furness are divorcing after nearly 2 years of separation. We talked about this one extensively 2 years ago in what was essentially the year of divorce. The fact that they didn't get divorced immediately, they just were separating. They're finally going through the paperwork and divorce is happening very soon. We'll talk about that if you deem it worthy. You deem it worthy by following us on our feeds on Facebook and X. Facebook.com/This Is Conversation Project, X.com/TH_conversation. As I said earlier, every 50 minutes or so, we post news articles from various sources and links there. If you see a headline and you think, hey, this is interesting, click the link to read it. Click on the emoji that you want to give it whatever your thought process is on this one. Reply to it with your comments so we know what you think about it there. And the higher engagement score a story gets, the better it is. We'll get about 30 stories within a 30-hour period from midnight to about 3 a.m. And then we'll take the top half of those stories, look at what's good, and go with that one. As I said today, I wanted to do the Grizzly story, but did not get enough support because I posted it so late. I'll probably do it as a hot take ahead of time for tomorrow and not deal with it in the show here. And the story about the cocaine and the flight attendant was just something that caught my attention. Did not get the response that was worthy of pulling up there. Florida man did, because Florida man always does. So look for these stories or any other story in our feed that you want to talk about. Engage in it so I know it's worthy of chatting up. This is how the dialogue works, because you tell me what stories are worthy of talking about. I bring them up here to talk about. What may also help you figure out what stories are worth talking about is Ground News. Ground News is an app and a website. It's a service where it helps you uncover where your news is coming from. If you're worried about getting too many stories that just seem too salacious, go to Ground News and check the story there. They will give you the true coverage, as in all the coverage, where you can figure out the truth for yourself. Local, national, and global news. Ground News allows you to diversify your sources, highlighting the stories that are missing from the outlets that you seem to overlook. If you are a person who loves some CNN and not a big fan of OAN, you will see both those side by side with their versions of the story. So you can take the versions and understand how both are being covered and get the political and sort of maybe these psychological standpoints and go with that one. Plus, there's a blind spot feature on the website that shows you stories that are being essentially overdone by a political viewpoint. People from the right may want to show a story that they think is really bad, looking for the left, same for the left, back and forth. At the other side will either ignore it because they think it's a nothing burger, or they really don't want you to talk about it. So they're going to try their best to make it not happen. You can form your own opinion by looking at balanced information. What's on either side, how they're being covered. Easy to read formats, side-by-side comparisons, and cut through the noise of what's going on by seeing exactly how it's covered. Use our affiliate link to help us out. We get a small commission for your signing up for it at is theconversationproject.com/ground news. When you use that link, you get a chance to get 40% off their Vantage plan and all their plans, 3 different tiers. Vantage is their big plan. It gives you all the news that you can probably stomach and some that you probably can't. And it's all there for you on a great deal. So get that for like less than $10 a month. It's that simple. Check it out at this is a conversationproject.com/ground news. Get it on the deal today. Our website for this project is this is conversationproject.com. This is a part of the More Better Media LLC family, where we provide for you media, information, thoughts that are hopefully good to know, good to learn, and very good to help you grow on, and also educational and also entertaining as well. So if you're looking for news that doesn't just reflect what the cable shows wanted you to do, check us out, because we pull stories from everywhere and need you to help us pick the stories to do in our little show here and in our hot takes, the clips of this plus the actual news stories you pop in here or there. Lately, I've been doing some more deep dives into how my mind works, how the Conversation Project works, how the news business these days works. And I'm getting some great response from those. I think folks who have reached out to that, especially on email for long discussions on that one. We'll do more of them hit or miss here or there as either an idea comes to mind or a time window happens or something just pops up. It is what it is. Explain how things go. I like this thing to be an explanation. The whole point of this is to be in a real explanation of things. It's supposed to be not just, some commentary with good hair or maybe not good hair, just going off on something and a lot of yeah, or comedy commentary, which is still commentary, but getting the point across by using humor and using some biting knowledge to kind of point across how things are not quite as they seem. So there's those things. This, yes, it's dry. Yes, it's newsy. Yes, it's reading off of scripts of what actually happened in the news story, because the important part is to understand the actual news story and then take my commentary not as the gospel as it is the right way, but as one person thinks, as a person who is a media observer, person who reads news all day long and kind of takes from both sides, both perspectives, how things going, what really seems to be the issue going forward and what people seem to not be understanding. And the harder part about that is the things that people seem to not be understanding, the motivations behind what's being pushed to them and why they may, I'm going to say it this way, fall for the okie doke in these cases. So to do that, it's very simple. We've told you about our website. Go to the website. This is theconversationproject.com. Find out more information about us, the Conversation Project, past episodes, and see our progression from things. Learn more about it from what we call our origin story. I'm gonna put more in there pretty soon. Talk about the origin of the 8 things to talk about newsletter, which is the sort of the middle ground of this thing. This website, the Conversation Project, basically started as a Conversation Project, as that moniker. Although I think the domain name changed a couple times, but it was a combination of what was supposed to be back in the day when the BuzzFeed surveys were a thing. Surveys on how you thought about different things, plus a newsletter I did and a podcast I did called 8 Things to Talk About, which were top 8 stories based off the same thing, based off engagement, but they literally locked into the top 8 stories. So sometimes a very boring, very dull, very story I didn't care about got in there because the algorithm did it to me that day. But really cool was a story about the snake that got bitten by like 10,000 fleas. That was awesome. In the meantime, check us out at our website. This is conversationproject.com. Email me at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Check us out on the feed so you can engage in the stories and tell us what to talk about. Facebook.com/This is the Conversation Project. X.com/th_conversation. Check everything out and help us grow this thing and keep it going forward. As said earlier, and saying once again today, as I speak these words, it's Wednesday, May 28, 2025. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do here for the Conversation Project. If you got it this far and you're not a bot, thank you. If you're a bot, I guess thank you as well. Feel free, if you're watching this live, to give us live comments. We have the feature now to put them on the screen, so when they pop up, we'll put them up there. I'm not wearing glasses. Zenny Optical is not our sponsor today. My glasses, I need to get my new glasses so I can actually see the screens and read at the same time. And so when that happens, I may be able to see the actual print on the things and screen them. Right now, it's Wild West. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, I love you guys so much. It's great to have you in the family. You help make this happen. Follow us on the feeds and help enjoy a news conversation with us back and forth. Engage in comments for the videos so that we can get what you really think. And those folks who aren't engaging in the feeds, some of the trolls, if you will, consider being a partner, consider going to more sponsors. You see that at the website. Consider being here tomorrow, watching the full show tomorrow for things you might not have heard.